Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars review. This is going to be my review for Skeleton Crew Episode 7, the second last episode of the season and maybe the series. I'm still a bit unclear about if they're going to try to do more or they're just going to leave it as the one season. I definitely think they could just wrap it up with one more episode if they do things in the right way, and that this doesn't necessarily feel like a show to me that needs to be multiple seasons long, just because I do think the kids don't feel like characters who need to just be around for seasons upon seasons. That it just feels like the intent with them was that they had this one adventure, they get to do some stuff, and depending on what they do in the final episode, they can leave them off in I think a decent spot. I liked this episode, but I wasn't blown away by it, which I think is a bit of a frustrating situation, just because this was an episode that technically had some of the bigger things we were waiting for, like the kids returning home, getting first the message from their parents, and then actually having the reunion with their parents at the end of the episode. Now, admittedly, because of the cliffhanger that they did with Jod arriving to immediately threaten kind of everyone right at the end, I suppose we didn't get the sort of full reunion right at the end, but we did get kind of most of it, and it didn't really do much for me kind of on an emotional level. It just felt like, oh yeah, we've been building up to this for a while. I think I've just accepted that the kids are not the most interesting kind of main characters, and that I do care more about the world building, the mysteries that are going on going into the last episode, rather than the kids' character development stuff, just because I don't think there's actually been that much development for the kids. They've each had their own very to the point, and I think simple character arc, but it hasn't really added that much to the series compared to the stuff that I actually do care about, which is like, I think Jod is an interesting character, though it seems like they're making the decision to have his main trait just be that he is a greedy pirate. Maybe they'll switch that around in the last episode, but it looks like they've made their choice here with him, the writers. Captain Renard is still an ongoing mystery, just with regards to like the stuff probably likely to be the reveals in the last episode with regards to who the supervisor is on at Aten. And it feels like that's kind of something they've been building up to for a while now. So I hope they can deliver on that, because that kind of is what this series is about. It's this kind of pirate kind of focused thing, including a legendary pirate and a kind of current pirate. So yeah, getting into this episode, a lot of the early section of this is just sort of positioning Jod so he can be a threat overall. So he goes from being captured by the current captain Brutus to actually being the captain after figuring out a few things and using his strong charisma. It is maybe getting a little bit overdone that he keeps giving these speeches. They let him talk and he's actually able to get something out of that, because he's clearly a more ambitious and creative kind of leader than anyone else they have, basically. So yeah, Brutus ends up getting killed because Jod sees the Onyx Cinder. He knows the full situation, that like the kids are obviously on it, no one else really does. Brutus ends up getting captured by the claw of the ship, and Jod just executes him and basically takes over the crew at this point. He also figures out that the Onyx Cinder is probably key to getting into the planet, because we do finally get to see that from the outside, the planet is in the middle of this kind of toxic maelstrom, as they call it. And then from the earlier episodes, it was kind of what nebula gases or something like that. So that explains why like no one's been able to find it, because it's just this massive pocket of like dangerous gas basically in space that you have to navigate through, or have, as we see here, a special ship to kind of get through. With the reveal there actually being one of the more clever ones in the show, which is that the legendary ship of the pirate captain is just an armored up official ship for the Mint. And this is how he was able to kind of, I suppose, go there, go back, is by just taking one of their official ships, so he has immediate kind of clearance to and from the planet. But he armored it up to be the pirate vessel, so it's not immediately kind of recognizable in that way. So that is a clever kind of solution to that overall, kind of explaining the ship in a little bit more detail overall. But yeah, overall they do just seem to be committing to, rather than making Jod this like complicated character where like there is an in-depth backstory for him, like they don't seem to right now be attempting to go in depth on why can he use the Force, was he a former Padawan or anything like that. I'm assuming they'll have to explain maybe a little bit of this in the last episode just to give him some further motivation, explain why he ended up the way he did. I took when he finally used the lightsaber as, okay, that was impressive, but I think anyone who can swing a sword could have done what he did. It didn't, to me, come across as this is someone with specialized training with a lightsaber. He just swung it at the right time to take out 33. So I'm leaning right now in the direction of just he is one of those kind of rare Star Wars characters who can use the Force, but is probably self-taught at using the Force, which is kind of interesting. But I'd like them to go into that, because that is interesting overall, more so than just him being a greedy pirate who just values money above all else. Like that's a really basic kind of villainous trait, that you just want all the money in the world. And he gets it. Like, he gets it to like an insane degree. Like, when it is, I think visually it's one of the more impressive shots in the show overall, of just they really get across the idea that like, oh, it's a mint, of course there's like a large stockpile of money we expected there to be because of how inconsequential this money is on Aten. But they still go above and beyond and make it clear that no, there is an extraordinary amount of money in this mint, to the point where if this is made like public or distributed out there in the galaxy, like that's an interesting one, because obviously puts a target on the planet, but then like if this just gets into circulation, I guess, does it not kind of destroy the value of this money overall? Because it is older money that seems to mostly be of value because it is a rare old money, but then now all of a sudden here is all of it basically. So there's something they're going to do here that I think changes our perceptions on this to a certain degree. But it does make me wonder like what the idea with Jod is going forward, like, because they have simplified his motivations down to just, okay, he's not going to go hungry anymore if he gets away with this. He'll have all this money, and I guess he's maybe, instead of just what should be the simple go-to thing for him, take a couple of trolley loads of that, take the ship and leave, and live a life of luxury with all the money in the world, basically. Which is probably what he should do. I guess he's going to try and get it all, while also having constant access to this place. So he's going to try and go above and beyond here and fully take over the planet, and be overly ambitious. And this is going to give the kids, I think, a chance to kind of turn the tables on him, which, because the kids I don't think did all that much in this episode, they're going to have to, I think, do something interesting in the last episode. My guess is that they're going to reference back to episode 4 at Akron and address stuff that, like, okay, the planets are all built to be very similar. And there was stuff like, there was a gun emplacement on one of the buildings in at Akron. That same place at Aten should also have a gun emplacement. So we can use that to maybe get the advantage on him at some point. There's bits and pieces that they've set up, like the bird character from episode 3 has not been called to help yet. Is that going to happen here? And it kind of feels like either you've got to do that here in the final episode, or that's maybe going to be your end note, potentially setting up a season 2, that, hey, if we make the planet super public coming out of this, what does that do? Do we want to do that? That's a kind of interesting point. But yeah, Jod's in an interesting position because he is mostly on his own. He has the control here, of course, but it's still a chaotic situation that he's not going to have full control over, because there's still the droids going around the place. There's still the supervisor. There's the rest of the crew doing stuff. I forget the exact positioning of everyone, but he's not going to be able to keep track of everyone and everything going on. So something's going to go wrong for him here. I suppose while I'm talking about it, let's talk about the supervisor. They actually had the characters speak, giving the announcement that, oh, like a Republic representative has landed on the planet. And it seemed like a shocking thing for everyone that this is the first time this has happened in most everyone's lives. The parents did actually have a scene where they revealed that, like, they were going to tell the kids a certain amount of stuff about the details of the planet after they graduated. But I am still under the impression that there is a bunch that the adults don't even know. That they don't know who the supervisor is. They don't know that, like, it's the New Republic outside, that, like, we're not still in the kind of older Republic eras, basically. And that's why they're kind of unfamiliar with some of this stuff. So, the exact details of a lot of that stuff still needs to come out. But they're certainly setting up the identity of the supervisor. I think there are two avenues to go down. One is just to continue the trend that the place is automated and is run by droids, and have the leader effectively be some sort of AI program or some greater droid to a certain degree. I think that is maybe the boring one, just because we already know the place is run by droids, and if you just reveal another droid, I don't think that's the most interesting reveal. Captain Rened himself probably is the obvious one, because they specifically avoided showing him when we had the previous communication scene of, like, the message from him. Now we know he's been able to go to the planet because of the reveal with the ship. It would make sense that, like, hey, if he first arrived here, figured out a bunch of stuff, stole a ship, and was able to sort of, like, be aware of what's going on the planet in full, surely he's probably clever enough to maybe set up a situation like this, that, like, hey, instead of, like, having to execute this kind of crazy plan where we constantly go to and from the planet acting like we're officials bringing money off the planet, what if we just took over the place in secret and acted as the leaders? That way, I'm here as the leader. I have access to the mint whenever I want. I'm the ruler of a planet, effectively. Is this not everything I wanted? And I'm fully secured. And I don't even have to do that much work, because I can just program the droids to do that for me, to basically lead the planet by just setting them a certain amount of, like, rules. Like, you know, the place is already protected by the nebula. Just make it so that we don't send messages off-world. That makes a lot of sense. And it fits into the kind of pirate theming a little bit more. I suppose the real question, though, is, that's fine and all. That would fit into sort of the setup here of what's going on. Finally revealing who the legendary Captain Rened actually is, what his character is, what his aim in all of this really is about. But there's still the overall thing, which is, by the end of this show, what status quo are we trying to establish? Like, what are we changing on Atten in the aftermath of this? Because the one thing with the kids they really expressed in this episode was that, kind of, it's a bit boring that they're maybe just going to return home and things will be exactly the same. Sure, the parents seem to have maybe, especially Wim's parent, his father, seem to have maybe changed things up a little bit. I'm going to listen to you a little bit more. But fundamentally, like, okay, we're still just going back to, like, oh yeah, I have a test to do, and we'll just get the jobs that we've all been sort of almost programmed to eventually get in the future. But they've had this adventure and would probably want more freedom. If they take down this structure of the planet, like they overthrow the droids, we find out that, you know, some AI program or Captain Rened is in charge. What then? Do we just create a new leadership structure on the planet? Do we suddenly make Atten a more public place in the galaxy once more, allowing people to arrive? Or do we still keep it a secret, but now it's not controlled by droids, so things can be a little bit more free and open? And then, you know, what happens when it comes to, like, the rest of the planets, which, apart from one of them, we didn't really explore what they were about. Because Atten makes sense because it has a mint. but what is the significance of the other ones? Like, do they all have mints on them, or is there something special associated with all the other At planets, that one of them maybe has big weapons or something like that, another one has this other thing? They haven't really gone into that, and that's kind of the world building thing that's going on, that these are great works related to like the kind of old kind of High Republic era. What's the idea here? Because surely the show has to have like an effect on the kind of broader franchise, that Skeleton Crew is important not just for the character stuff it did with the new characters we were introduced to, but also because the plot of the show happened, and now Aten is not a legend anymore. It's a real planet that we can go to. What effect does that have on the galaxy? And this is maybe where, like, is that the significance of the crazy amount of money? Does that allow someone to suddenly gain access to huge amounts of money to do or accomplish something? That's interesting by itself. But it does feel like there has to be some sort of a reveal that happens here to just end on a better note for the kids, to have like a better future that makes their journey kind of having meant something a little bit more. Probably the adults as well. How do you wrap things up with Jod? Again, I still think you have to do some backstory work with him, just to in some way explain what his deal is. How did he become a pirate in the first place? Where did the greed come from? Why is he a Force user? Because they could still do the, you know, he somehow survived Order 66. He was a very young Jedi Padawan or something like that. And I'd be fine with that. It's just I want to see some depth from that character kind of coming out of this. Otherwise, yeah, the show's like fairly straightforward kind of as it is. Otherwise, like, there's those couple of big mysteries, but the character stuff that I'm mostly interested in is like, just more with Jod, something with Captain Rennet, and then the world building stuff with the At planets, specifically this planet, the mint and the money is a big kind of plot thread as well. And it just means that, unfortunately the kids are kind of at the back of my radar to a certain degree when I'm thinking about the last episode, because okay, they're back home, they've had their adventure, hopefully they'll be in a position to be more free maybe going forward, but we also haven't explored things that much. Obviously the one thing is that, like, the two groups of kind of two friends, it's now a group of four, which is, one of the things that the series has done. But it does feel like we need to link things back into the other At planets is probably my main takeaway. Could they do a big reveal at the end where they open up the door for a season 2 and wait, actually we need to go to those other At planets because of this, and this reason? That could make for a very interesting series where the kids need to go on all these adventures because, they've been chosen or something like that. It's hard to, I think, overly justify that, just because, like I said, they haven't done that much like significant character work with the kids. At every opportunity, they seem to be just highlighting that, like, there's nothing really special about any of the kids. Like, any situation where you think they're going to, like, turn the tables, like win with the lightsaber, it's just like, no, he's just a kid. Of course the adults are going to take over the situation, and he's just a kid, he's not going to get anything done. The best that the kids have is just a little bit of kind of chaos that they're able to kind of activate in a specific situation that people can't quite expect. But I'm going to wrap up the video there. One episode to go. I think the series has been pretty nice so far overall, but I still maintain a lot about what I said about it in like my earlier videos about it, which is just that it feels like a show that was approved and made during an era where Disney were more adventurous, and it feels like we are past that now, and this show is just, it's going to get these episodes and we're going to be done with it. And they still don't know exactly what they need to do, because I don't think the takeaway from this show is that you need to do multiple shows like this. necessarily. There's maybe some production stuff that you should be applying to your other shows that something like this shows, because it's quite well made, of course. And because it's relatively simple, it's good in the writing department, but you also need to be able to be good in the writing department on your more maybe lore complicated shows as well. And that just should be something that is possible to happen. You don't have to, like, it shouldn't be the situation in Star Wars that you can only write good Star Wars if you take away Star Wars stuff and make it just, you know, the most simple story in the world with a little bit of Star Wars. That's the kind of point here. And like I said, and I think on my last video, this show remains somewhat low on my scale of things in Star Wars that I'm super interested in, but it's well made enough for what it is that it's moving me along, and it has some nice mysteries. I just hope it can get over the final hurdle in the last episode. And I think the big thing I hope for is that it doesn't end on a giant, like, this needs season 2 to be satisfying type cliffhanger, because I'm not sure if the show's maybe going to get a season 2 necessarily. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on episode 7 of Skeleton Crew. What are your expectations for the finale? Where do you think it's going to go? And what do you think the situation is with regards to, is there going to be a season 2, or is it just going to be one and done? And where is Star Wars going after this, basically? Well, let me know that in the comments, but that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.